The morning started like any other Tuesday until the sky began to burn. Lisa Hayes was drinking her coffee in the command center at Colorado Springs when every screen in the building went dark. The silence that followed was the kind that makes your ears ring and your heart pound. Outside, the first alien ships appeared through the clouds like black daggers cutting through paper. The ships moved in perfect formation, each one the size of a city block. Their hulls were smooth and dark, reflecting nothing. They made no sound as they descended, which somehow made them more terrifying than if they had roared like thunder. Lisa had seen enough war movies to know what was coming, but movies never prepared you for the real thing. The first strike hit the Pentagon at exactly 9:15 in the morning. A beam of white light erupted from the lead ship and turned the massive building into a crater in less than 3 seconds. The shockwave shattered windows for miles around. Then the second beam hit NORD, and the third took out the naval base at Norfolk. In the space of 10 minutes, every major military installation on the continent was reduced to smoking holes in the ground. Lisa watched her world end through the reinforced windows of the command bunker. The aliens were methodical, almost polite in their destruction. They targeted only military sites, leaving civilian areas untouched. It was a message, she realized. They could have killed everyone, but they chose not to. They wanted Earth to surrender, not to die. The communication came an hour later, broadcast simultaneously to every surviving radio in the world. The voice was artificial, translated by some kind of machine, but the words were clear enough. The speakers called themselves the Hegemony. They represented 12 different alien species who had been watching Earth for decades. They had come to deliver a judgment. Humanity was too dangerous to be allowed into the galactic community. The proof was in their own history of endless warfare, their rapid technological advancement, and their disturbing refusal to surrender when faced with superior force. Therefore, Earth would be quarantined. Humanity would be monitored and controlled to prevent them from spreading their violent nature to the stars. Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach as she listened to the broadcast. The aliens had made a mistake, though they did not know it yet. They had studied human warfare through the lens of their own civilized conflicts, where superior technology meant quick victory and minimal casualties. They had never encountered a species that treated warfare as an art form, that learned from every defeat and adapted with terrifying speed. The alien ships began their second phase of operations that afternoon. They targeted power plants, communication towers, and transportation hubs. Within hours, the entire planet was dark. No electricity, no internet, no way for governments to coordinate a response. The aliens had cut the nervous system of human civilization with surgical precision, but something else was happening in the darkness, in buried bunkers and hidden facilities. In the minds of 7 billion humans who had just watched their world burn, a different kind of war was beginning. The aliens had expected panic, chaos, and quick surrender. Instead, they got something they had never seen before in their long history of conquest. They got humans being human. Lisa made her way through the darkened corridors of the bunker, gathering her surviving staff. Most of the senior officers were dead, killed in the initial strikes. The few who remained were young, scared, and looking to her for leadership. She was scared too, but she had been trained for this moment her entire career. The emergency protocols were clear. When regular command structure failed, authority passed to whoever could maintain it. Lisa had survived because she had been in the right place at the right time. Now, she had to figure out what to do with that survival. The first reports came in through hand-cranked radios and runners on foot. The aliens were not occupying territory in the traditional sense. They were hovering over major cities, scanning and monitoring, but not landing troops. They seemed to be waiting for something. Surrender, perhaps. Or maybe they were just studying their new prisoners. Lisa gathered her team in the deepest part of the bunker. The walls were lined with maps and communication equipment that no longer worked. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on their faces. Everyone looked older than they had that morning, aged by the weight of what they had witnessed. The discussion was brief and to the point. The aliens had superior technology, but they had also revealed their strategy. They wanted to control humanity, not destroy it. That meant they had weaknesses, blind spots that could be exploited. The key was to think like humans, not like the aliens expected them to think. Military doctrine said that when facing a superior enemy, you avoid direct confrontation and strike at their weaknesses. The aliens expected humans to fight like other species they had conquered, using conventional tactics and weapons. But humans had been preparing for this scenario for generations without even knowing it. Every disaster movie, every survival guide, every military training exercise had contributed to an unconscious preparation for exactly this moment. When the infrastructure collapsed, humanity would not panic. They would adapt. They would disappear into the places the aliens could not easily reach. They would wait, learn, and strike back when the time was right. Lisa looked around the room at her team. They were soldiers, engineers, and intelligence officers. They represented the best of human military thinking. But more importantly, they represented something the aliens had never encountered before. They were humans who had just been told. They were too dangerous to be allowed freedom. The aliens had made their greatest mistake right at the beginning. They had given humanity a common enemy and a clear objective. Every human on Earth now knew exactly what they were fighting for. Not just survival, but the right to exist as a free species. The right to make their own mistakes and learn from them, the right to reach for the stars. On their own terms, as the alien ships continued their methodical destruction of Earth's infrastructure, something else was happening in the shadows. In buried bunkers and hidden facilities, in caves and basements and abandoned buildings, 7 billion humans were beginning to plan their response. The aliens had taken their first shot. Now it was humanity's turn. The war was just beginning. 3 months after the first attack, the world had gone dark in ways the aliens had never expected. They had planned for human surrender, for chaos and panic, for the quick collapse of organized resistance. Instead, humanity had simply vanished. The cities were empty, the highways abandoned, the factories silent. 7 billion people had scattered like seeds in the wind, disappearing into places the aliens could not easily reach. Admiral Voss stood on the bridge of his command ship, studying the reports from his occupation forces. The massive vessel hung in orbit above what had once been New York City, its sensors scanning the empty streets below. The humans had abandoned their greatest cities without a fight, leaving behind only empty buildings and silent streets. The reports were consistent across the planet. Major population centers were deserted. The humans had not died. They had simply moved. Satellite imagery showed small groups scattered across wilderness areas, mountain ranges, and remote locations. They were hiding, but they were not idle. Strange energy signatures appeared and disappeared across the globe, too brief to track, too weak to identify. What Voss did not understand was that humans had been preparing for this scenario for their entire recorded history. Every generation had produced stories about invasion, occupation, and resistance. Every military had plans for fighting superior enemies. Every culture had legends about heroes who struck back against impossible odds. When the real invasion came, humanity was ready in ways they had never consciously planned. In the tunnels beneath New York, Dr. Rachel Kim worked by candlelight, surrounded by salvaged electronics and improvised tools. The subway system had become a manufacturing facility, its abandoned stations converted into workshops and laboratories. Above ground, the alien ships patrolled empty streets. Below ground, humanity was learning to fight back. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. A group of teenagers in the ruins of Tokyo had been experimenting with alien power cells, trying to get their gaming systems running. What they discovered instead was that the alien technology relied on quantum resonance patterns that were surprisingly vulnerable to certain forms of electromagnetic interference. The information spread through the human resistance network like wildfire. Hidden radio operators passed coded messages between scattered groups. Runners carried data through mountain passes and forest trails. Engineers in every major city began working on weaponizing the discovery. The aliens' greatest advantage was about to become their greatest weakness. Rachel looked at the device on her workbench. It was crude by pre-war standards, built from salvaged electronics and alien components. But it represented something that had never existed before in galactic history. It was human ingenuity applied to alien technology, creating something that was more than the sum of its parts. The Resistance had learned to think differently about technology. The aliens built things to last, to be efficient, to follow predictable patterns. Humans built things to adapt, to surprise, to do things they were never originally designed to do. Every alien device that fell into human hands became a puzzle to solve, a problem to hack, a tool to repurpose. The first successful test came on a rainy Tuesday morning. Rachel's team had modified one of the alien power cells, turning it into a localized electromagnetic pulse generator. When they activated it, every alien device within a 2-block radius suddenly went dark. Security sensors, communication relays, even the small patrol drones that constantly swept the empty streets, all fell silent at once. The effect lasted only minutes before the aliens' automatic systems came back online. But those minutes were enough. For the first time since the invasion, humans had made alien technology fail. They had found a weakness and they intended to exploit it. Similar successes were being reported from resistance cells around the world. In the mountains of Afghanistan, former soldiers were combining alien energy weapons with human explosives, creating hybrid devices that the aliens had never seen before. In the caves of Australia, scientists were studying alien communication systems, learning to intercept and decode their messages. But the most important development was psychological. Humanity was learning that their enemies were not invincible. The aliens had superior technology, but they also had limitations. They thought in predictable patterns, followed established procedures, and relied on their technological advantages to solve problems. They were not prepared for an enemy that refused to follow the rules. The aliens had studied human warfare through recorded history, but they had missed the most important lesson. Humans did not just fight wars, they evolved through them. Every conflict taught them something new about tactics, strategy, and adaptation. They had been unconsciously preparing for interstellar warfare for centuries, and they did not even know it. Every disaster movie had been a training exercise. Every survival guide had been a manual for guerrilla warfare. Every military simulation had been preparation for fighting technologically superior enemies. The aliens had not just underestimated human technology, they had fundamentally misunderstood what humans were. Rachel received word that similar resistance cells were operating on every continent. The aliens had destroyed the infrastructure, but they could not destroy human knowledge. Every smartphone had contained the sum of human technical achievement, and while the phones were dead, the knowledge lived on in human memory. The resistance was not just surviving, it was growing. Every day brought new recruits, new discoveries, new successes. The aliens had expected humanity to break under the weight of their technological superiority. Instead, they had given humanity something it had never had before, a common enemy and a clear objective. The plan was taking shape in hidden bunkers and secret meetings around the world. The aliens thought they were fighting a primitive species with crude weapons. They had no idea they were facing something that had been preparing for this moment for generations. Something that treated warfare as an art form that learned from every defeat, that adapted with terrifying speed. The first phase of the human counterattack was already beginning. Small groups were moving into position, carrying improvised weapons and stolen alien technology. They were not planning to match the aliens' massive fleet formations or overwhelming firepower. They were planning to do something the aliens had never seen before in their long history of conquest. They were planning to fight like humans. Admiral Voss studied the latest intelligence reports with growing unease. The human resistance was becoming more organized, more sophisticated, more dangerous. They were not behaving like any species the hegemony had ever conquered. They were adapting too quickly, learning too much, preparing for something that made his tactical officers nervous. The scattered energy signatures were becoming more frequent, more powerful. The humans were building something down there in their tunnels and caves. Something that might change the balance of power in ways the hegemony had never imagined. Something that would force them to reconsider their assumptions about primitive species and their capacity for warfare, something that would make them regret ever coming to Earth. The first successful counterattack came exactly 1 year after the initial invasion. The aliens later called it the Tokyo Incident, dismissing it as a technical malfunction caused by Earth's unpredictable magnetic field. 3 of their occupation ships had simply fallen from the sky, their systems failing in a cascading series of explosions that lit up the night sky over the ruined city. Admiral Voss received the report in his command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the wreckage of the downed vessels. His tactical officers were puzzled by the failure patterns. The ships had not been destroyed by external weapons, they had simply stopped working. Every system had failed simultaneously, as if someone had found a way to turn off their technology like flipping a switch. What Voss did not know was that the attack had been planned for months. Hidden in the ruins of Tokyo, a team of human engineers had spent the entire year studying captured alien technology. They had mapped the quantum signatures of every alien vessel in Earth's vicinity, learning to read their energy patterns like a book. When they finally struck, it was with surgical precision. The device they had built was crude by alien standards, assembled from salvaged electronics and components stripped from crashed ships. But it represented something that had never existed before in galactic history. It was human creativity applied to alien technology, creating a weapon that could turn the enemy's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Rachel Kim stood in the ruins of what had once been Tokyo Station, watching the burning alien ships fall from the sky. The electromagnetic pulse generator had worked perfectly, sending a carefully tuned signal that resonated with the quantum patterns of alien technology. The ships had not been destroyed, they had been turned off. Their own systems had shut down, in response to a frequency they had never been designed to encounter. But the humans were not satisfied with small victories. In the mountains of Afghanistan, Marcus Stone was working with local resistance cells to develop something even more dangerous. Stone had been a special forces operator before the invasion, trained in guerrilla warfare and unconventional tactics. Now he was applying those skills to an enemy that had never faced anything like human military thinking. The aliens fought wars like a chess game, with careful planning and predictable moves. Each side deployed their forces according to established doctrine, seeking to achieve victory through superior technology and overwhelming force. It was civilized warfare, conducted by species that had evolved beyond the crude brutality of primitive conflict. Humans fought wars like a knife fight in a phone booth, with creativity, desperation, and a willingness to break every rule if it meant survival. They had been doing it for thousands of years, perfecting the art of turning weakness into strength, of making the enemy's advantages work against them. Stone's plan was audacious even by human standards. Instead of trying to match the aliens' technological superiority, he would exploit their psychological weaknesses. The alien species had evolved in stable, predictable environments. They had never faced an enemy that treated chaos as a weapon, that used unpredictability as a strategic advantage. The assault began at dawn on a cold February morning. 50 small teams launched simultaneous attacks on alien positions across the globe. Each attack was different, each one designed to create maximum confusion and disruption. Some used captured alien weapons, others employed crude but effective human explosives. Some were direct assaults, others were elaborate deceptions designed to waste alien resources. The key was timing. Every attack began at exactly the same moment, creating a global crisis that overwhelmed the alien command structure. Their communication networks became clogged with damage reports and requests for reinforcement. Ships were recalled from peaceful sectors to deal with emergencies. Supply lines were disrupted as commanders tried to respond to threats that seemed to appear everywhere at once. The aliens had superior technology, but they also had a rigid command structure that depended on careful coordination and predictable responses. When faced with 50 simultaneous crises, Their system began to break down. Orders conflicted with other orders, resources were wasted on false targets, and their carefully planned occupation began to fall apart. Stone watched the chaos unfold from his position in the Hindu Kush Mountains, monitoring alien communications through captured equipment. The enemy commanders were panicking, their voices rising in pitch as they tried to coordinate responses to attacks that followed no pattern they could recognize. This was what humans called asymmetric warfare, and they had been perfecting it for centuries. It was not about winning battles, it was about making the enemy defeat themselves. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to fight a conventional war against a primitive species. Instead, they were facing something that had been preparing for this exact scenario for generations. The psychological impact was devastating. The aliens had convinced themselves that humans were too primitive to pose a real threat. The coordinated attack shattered that illusion, revealing a level of organization and tactical sophistication that the alien commanders had never expected. Worse, they were beginning to realize that this was not a desperate last stand, but the opening move in a much larger game. Intelligence reports began flowing in from across the human resistance network. The aliens were pulling back from outlying positions, consolidating their forces around major population centers. They were acting defensively for the first time since the invasion, responding to human initiative rather than dictating the terms of engagement. But the most disturbing reports came from the technical analysis teams. The humans were not just using captured alien technology, they were improving it. Every weapon that fell into human hands was reverse engineered, modified, and enhanced using techniques that the aliens had never seen before. The primitive species was adapting to galactic technology faster than anyone had thought possible. Admiral Voss stood in his command center, studying the tactical displays with growing alarm. The human attacks had been perfectly coordinated, striking at exactly the right moment to cause maximum disruption. The level of planning required was staggering, suggesting an organizational capability that the aliens had completely underestimated. More disturbing still was the realization that this was not a random uprising, but the execution of a carefully planned strategy. The humans had been preparing for this moment since the invasion began, learning from every encounter, studying every piece of alien technology they could capture. They had turned the occupation into a learning experience, and now they were ready to apply what they had learned. The reports from the technical teams were equally alarming. Human modifications to alien technology were not just functional, they were innovative. The primitives were finding ways to use galactic technology that its original designers had never imagined. They were treating advanced scientific instruments like toys, taking them apart and putting them back together in ways that should not have worked, but somehow did. The attack had accomplished something more important than the destruction of a few ships. It had proven that humans could strike back, that they could turn alien technology against its creators, that they could fight a war on terms that the aliens had never encountered before. The psychological warfare was just beginning. In hidden bunkers around the world, human leaders were already planning the next phase of their campaign. They had learned something important from the coordinated attacks. The aliens could be hurt, their technology could be defeated, and their rigid command structure could be turned against them. The occupation was about to become much more complicated than anyone had expected. The war was escalating, and for the first time since the invasion began, it was the aliens who were afraid. The true scope of human preparation became clear during what historians would later call the Revelation Week. It began when alien search teams, desperately trying to locate the sources of the coordinated attacks, discovered something that would fundamentally change how they viewed their human enemies. Commander Thex led the search team that found the hidden facility in the Appalachian Mountains. They had been tracking energy signatures for weeks, following faint traces of quantum resonance that suggested human activity. What they expected to find was a crude rebel hideout, perhaps a few dozen humans with stolen weapons and improvised explosives. What they found instead defied every assumption they had made about primitive species and their technological capabilities. The facility was massive, carved deep into the mountain bedrock and extending for miles through natural cave systems. But it was not the size that shocked the alien search team, it was the sophistication. The humans had built a fully functional spacecraft manufacturing facility, using nothing but salvaged materials and their own ingenuity. Dr. Elena Reeves had been leading the project since the early days of the occupation. She had been a NASA engineer. Before the invasion, one of the few humans who had actually worked on spacecraft design. When the aliens destroyed Earth's space program, she had simply moved underground and continued her work using whatever material she could find. The ships under construction were unlike anything in the alien database. They incorporated design principles that seemed to violate basic laws of physics, yet somehow they worked. The humans had taken captured alien technology and rebuilt it from the ground up, creating hybrid vessels that were more advanced than anything their creators had produced. Vex walked through the facility in stunned silence, his tactical team following behind him with weapons drawn. The humans had surrendered without a fight, but they seemed almost amused by the alien presence. They acted like people who had been expecting this moment, who had planned for it and prepared for it. The interrogation began immediately. Vex needed to understand how a primitive species had developed such advanced technology in such a short time. The answers he received would shake the foundations of everything the aliens believed about galactic civilization. Elena sat across from the alien commander in a makeshift interrogation room, completely calm despite being surrounded by armed guards. She had been preparing for this conversation for months, knowing that eventually the aliens would find one of their facilities. When Nex began his questions, she was ready with answers that would terrify him. The spacecraft were not accidents, she explained. They were the result of a systematic program of reverse engineering that had been going on since the first day of the occupation. Every piece of alien technology that fell into human hands was studied, analyzed, and improved upon. The humans had not just copied alien designs, they had evolved them. But that was not the most disturbing revelation. The resistance was not a desperate response to invasion, Elena told him. It was the activation of a plan that had been decades in the making. Every major human nation had protocols for maintaining military capability after a complete infrastructure collapse. They had been preparing for total war scenarios for their entire recorded history. Vex felt something cold settle in his stomach as he listened to the human scientist. The aliens had studied human warfare through historical records, but they had missed the most important fact. Humans did not just fight wars, they planned for them. Every conflict in their history had taught them something new about survival, adaptation, and resistance. The revelation sent shockwaves through the alien command structure. Intelligence reports began flooding in from across the planet as search teams discovered facility after facility hidden in mountains, caves, and underground bunkers. The humans had not just survived the occupation, they had been thriving under it. Every human disaster movie had been a training exercise. Every survival guide had been a manual for guerrilla warfare. Every military simulation had been preparation for fighting technologically superior opponents. The aliens had not just underestimated human technology. They had fundamentally misunderstood what humans were. Admiral Voss studied the intelligence reports in his command center. His tactical officers gathered around him in stunned silence. The scope of human preparation was staggering. Hidden facilities on every continent, manufacturing capabilities that rivaled galactic standards, and a level of organization that suggested planning on a scale that the aliens had never imagined. But the most disturbing reports came from the technical analysis teams. The humans were not just improving alien technology, they were innovating beyond it. Their hybrid spacecraft incorporated design principles that challenged basic assumptions about physics and engineering. They were creating things that should not have worked but somehow did. The humans had turned the occupation into a learning experience, treating every alien ship and weapon as a textbook to be studied and improved upon. They approached technology like a puzzle to be solved, not a tool to be used. They were natural engineers, born innovators who saw possibilities where others saw limitations. The interrogation of captured Human leaders revealed the full scope of the threat. The resistance was not just about driving the aliens off Earth, it was about preparing humanity for interstellar warfare. The humans were building a war machine that would allow them to take the fight to the alien homeworlds, to turn the invasion into a launching pad for their own expansion into the galaxy. Elena had been completely honest about human intentions. Earth had been attacked by a superior enemy, and humanity had responded exactly as they always did when faced with an existential threat. They had adapted, learned, and prepared to strike back with everything they had. The aliens had wanted to prevent humans from spreading their violent nature to the stars, but they had actually accelerated the process. The psychological impact on the alien forces was devastating. They had come to Earth expecting to fight a primitive species with crude weapons. Instead, they were facing something that had been unconsciously preparing for interstellar warfare for centuries. Something that treated conflict as an opportunity to learn and grow stronger. The reports from the interrogation teams painted a picture of a species that was fundamentally different from anything in the galactic database. Humans did not just fight wars, they evolved through them. Every conflict taught them something new about tactics, strategy, and adaptation. They had been turning their own violent history into a comprehensive education in warfare. The aliens began to realize that they had made a catastrophic error in judgment. They had attacked Earth because they believed humans were too dangerous to be allowed into the galactic community. But by attacking them, they had given humanity a reason to become everything they had feared. The occupation was not preventing human expansion, it was preparing them for it. Commander Thex submitted his final report with a heavy heart. The humans were not just building spacecraft, they were building a future. They had taken the alien attack as a challenge to overcome, not a defeat to accept. They were preparing to leave Earth not as refugees, but as conquerors. The revelation that would change everything was still to come. The humans had not just reverse-engineered alien technology, they had improved it so dramatically that their own systems were now superior to anything the aliens possessed. The species that had been deemed too dangerous for the galactic community was about to prove exactly why they deserved that designation. The war was about to enter a new phase. And for the first time since the invasion began, it was the aliens who were facing extinction. The humans were coming, and they were bringing with them weapons and strategies that would redefine warfare across the galaxy. The occupation of Earth was about to become the liberation of humanity, and the galaxy would never be the same. The final phase of the human counterattack began exactly 2 years after the initial invasion, and it would redefine warfare across the galaxy. The operation was codenamed Prometheus, and it represented the culmination of everything humanity had learned about their enemies, their technology, and their own capacity for warfare. Commander Lisa Hayes stood in the command center of the first human-built starship, watching the tactical displays that showed alien fleet positions throughout the solar system. The vessel around her was a testament to human ingenuity, a hybrid of captured alien technology and human engineering that was unlike anything that had ever existed in galactic history. Were the aliens built for efficiency and predictability? Humans built for adaptability and surprise. The ship's hull was covered in stealth plating that could shift its electromagnetic signature, making it invisible to alien sensors. Its weapon systems were modular, capable of being reconfigured in real time to counter any threat. Most importantly, its computer systems were designed to think like humans, not like the logical alien artificial intelligences that controlled enemy vessels. The human fleet had been assembled in secret over the past 6 months, using manufacturing facilities hidden across the solar system. Ships were built in asteroid mines, on the dark side of the moon, and in the depths of Earth's oceans. The aliens had been watching for surface activity, but they had never imagined that humans would take their war industry into space. Hayes opened the communication channel that now connected human forces across the solar system. The network was built using stolen alien technology, but it operated on principles that the aliens had never seen before. Instead of relying on centralized command structures, it functioned like a living organism, with each unit capable of independent action while remaining connected to the whole. The message she broadcast was simple and direct, carrying with it the weight of 2 years of preparation and the anger of 7 billion humans who had been told they were too dangerous to be free. The aliens had wanted to see what humans did when cornered, she told them. Today they would see what humans did when they were ready. The attack began with a computer virus, but it was unlike anything in the Galactic database. Human programmers had spent months studying alien communication protocols, learning to think like their quantum-based artificial intelligences. The virus they created was not just a program. It was a psychological weapon designed to exploit the weaknesses of logical thinking. Systems. The virus spread through the alien fleet faster than their security systems could respond. It did not destroy their systems, it confused them. It made their weapons target friendly ships, their navigation systems plot courses into dangerous stellar phenomena, their life support systems fail in precisely calculated sequences that would cause maximum panic without immediate death. But the technological warfare was just the beginning. The humans had learned to think like their enemies, to predict their responses, to turn their strengths into weaknesses. When the alien fleet attempted to retreat to their rally points, they found human ships waiting for them. Not ships that had somehow traveled faster than light, but ships that had been built in those very locations using resources the aliens had never known existed. The human strategy was based on a simple principle that the aliens had never encountered before. Instead of trying to match their enemies' strengths, they would exploit their weaknesses. The aliens thought in terms of overwhelming force and technological superiority. Humans thought in terms of creativity, adaptation, and the willingness to break every rule if it meant victory. Admiral Voss watched his carefully planned formations dissolve into chaos as human ships appeared throughout the solar system. They were not following any tactical doctrine in the Galactic database. They were improvising in real time, adapting to changing conditions, with a speed that his tactical computers could not match. The human ships were smaller than alien vessels, but they were faster, more maneuverable, and armed with weapons that should not have worked but somehow did. They fought like a swarm of insects, coordinating their attacks without apparent central command, striking at weak points and withdrawing before the aliens could respond. But the most terrifying aspect of the human attack was its psychological impact. The aliens had convinced themselves that they were fighting a primitive species with crude weapons. The reality was that they were facing something that had been preparing for this moment for centuries, something that had turned their own technological advantages against them. The breakthrough came when human forces captured an alien command ship intact. The boarding action was led by Marcus Stone, now commanding a hybrid assault team equipped with the best human and alien technology available. They had not just taken the ship, they had converted it into a weapon that would end the war. The captured vessel became a Trojan horse, broadcasting false intelligence to the remaining alien fleet while human technicians worked to crack the quantum encryption codes that protected their communication networks. When they finally succeeded, the result was devastating. Every alien ship in the system suddenly lost the ability to communicate with each other or with their home base. The isolation was more than tactical, it was psychological. The alien species had evolved as collective thinkers, relying on constant communication and shared decision-making. When that link was severed, they became paralyzed, unable to function as individual units. Their greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. The final assault came at dawn on a cold March morning. Human forces struck simultaneously at every alien position in the solar system, using tactics that had been perfected over 2 years of guerrilla warfare. They did not try to destroy the alien ships, they captured them, turning each victory into additional resources for the human war machine. The aliens had expected humans to fight like other species they had conquered, using conventional tactics and predictable strategies. Instead, they had faced something that treated warfare as an art form, that learned from every encounter, that adapted with terrifying speed to any challenge. Elena Reeves stood in the captured alien command center, watching the surrender negotiations. On the main display, The remaining alien commanders had finally accepted the reality of their situation. They had not just been defeated, they had been out-hot, outmaneuvered, and outfought by a species they had considered primitive. The terms of surrender were harsh but fair. The aliens would leave Earth immediately and never return. They would share their technology with humanity, allowing peaceful expansion into the galaxy. Most importantly, they would spread word throughout the galactic community that humans were not to be underestimated or attacked. Admiral Voss, now a prisoner on his own ship, finally understood the magnitude of his species' error. The aliens had attacked Earth expecting to face a primitive species with crude weapons. Instead, they had awakened something that would change the balance of power across the galaxy. But the humans were not content with simply driving off their invaders. They had learned something important during the 2 years of occupation. The galaxy was full of species that thought they could impose their will on others through superior technology. It was time to teach them a different lesson about the nature of power. The human fleet that departed Earth 6 months later was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was not built for exploration or peaceful contact. It was built for war. Every ship carried weapons that combined human creativity with alien technology, creating hybrid systems that were more advanced than anything their original designers had imagined. The first alien colony to encounter the human fleet was a mining operation in the Centauri system. The colonists had received warnings about the dangerous species from Earth, but they had dismissed them as exaggerations. How dangerous could a primitive species really be, even with captured technology? The answer came in the form of a human fleet that appeared without warning in their system. The humans did not attack immediately. They simply broadcast a message that would be repeated at every alien world they visited. Earth had taken the hit. They said now they were hitting back tenfold. The mining colony surrendered without firing a shot. The colonists had heard the reports from the occupation fleet, had seen the tactical analyses of human warfare capabilities. They knew that resistance was not just futile, it was suicidal. The humans had proven that they could turn any technological advantage against its users. The message spread through the galactic communication network faster than the human fleet could travel. Species after species received the same warning. Humanity was coming, and they were bringing with them everything they had learned about warfare, survival, and the art of turning impossible odds into inevitable victory. The alien invasion had ended with humanity's liberation, but it had begun something far more significant. The age of human expansion into the stars had started, and the galaxy would never be the same. The species that had been deemed too dangerous to be allowed freedom had proven exactly why they deserved to be feared. The universe was about to become a much more interesting place, and it was the aliens themselves who had made it possible. They had given humanity the greatest gift imaginable, a reason to leave Earth, the technology to do it, and the knowledge that they could defeat any enemy that stood in their way. Earth had taken the hit, learned from it, and hit back tenfold. The galaxy would remember that lesson for generations to come.